early piano. Hi, good morning, and thank you for joining us at the 9th Annual Startup Boston Week. My name is Lakshmi, and I'll be your host today. And our mission with this conference is very simple to bring together the entire startup community across every industry department and funding stage. And Startup Boston exists as a resource to connect, educate, and celebrate this ecosystem. And also, before we dive in, I'd like to give a huge thanks to Suffolk University for hosting us. Suffolk has been partnering with us for the last 3 years, providing the space and kind because of their deep commitment to supporting Boston's startup community. And if you're interested in entrepreneurship, they have a variety of programs in the vendor hall in fifth floor to support your journey. And I think I'm going to hand over the mic now.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Can you guys hear me all right? Okay, cool. My name is Darian. I'm going to be the moderator for the panel today, this morning. I'm joined by Chuyen, Ashish, and Rich. Would love for each of you maybe to give a quick, maybe 1-minute introduction. We can start with Chuyen.
Sure. Thank you, Darian. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm Choyan and Choyan Xu. I'm the CEO and the founder of Gravitate AI. We are a Boston-based company started from 2019 that we help startups to develop and scale AI software solutions. We're now also working with larger enterprises as well. So we do see a lot of different challenges, right, from AI development to all the way to maintenance in different industries. So I'm very happy to be here to share some of our experience.
Thanks. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Can you folks hear me? Hi, my name is Ashish Bhatia. I'm a product manager right now with Audible, and I focus on content discovery and search. In my past life, I was with Microsoft for about 11 years, building AI platforms. So again, I'm super excited to be here and again, share my thoughts around how to think through data as you go through your AI journeys.
Hi, I'm Richard DeBona, and I'm the co-founder of Describe.ai, and we're a legal tech, legal research platform. And I come from a software engineering background with working with big data. I worked at a lot of e-commerce like TJX and Wayfair and all that, and work with a lot of big data. So now we're applying it to the tons of data in the legal space.
And as I mentioned, I'm Darian. I am a product engineer and lead at Liquid AI. We're a small foundation model company in Kendall Square, Cambridge. Yeah, very excited to be here and help spread the knowledge from these three great panelists. So I guess we'll just jump right into it.
Yeah, small is an understatement, though.
Well, small models, big impact. Yeah.
They're pretty cool.
So yeah, we'll just jump right into the first question. I think we'll start Rich, and Ashish and Choyan, please jump in. Afterwards, Rich, I'm curious about your thoughts about the most overlooked aspects of data quality that could potentially make or break an AI system's performance, specifically in early stage startups.
Yeah, I mean, I think with our data, because we're dealing with legal data, we deal with judicial opinions, which is what the judges write after you appeal something and get it going up the court system. Like the data quality and data accuracy is obviously super important because you have attorneys relying on it, and then you have them using your data and writing it into briefs and submitting that to judges. So, and people's lives are at stake, and people's things are at stake. So the data is super important for quality. And so what we chose to do is, instead of using an LLM on the fly and responding to user queries, we did all of the data processing up front. And so we actually processed like 100 million rows of legal data with the OpenAI and stored all that so that when people are using our system, they're actually just using like a database front end. So we don't have to worry about calling the LLM whenever somebody makes a request. And that's when you can run into the hallucinations, is when you call things on the fly and have the LLM give sometimes unpredictable responses.
Very cool. Chuyen or Ashish, do you have any experience with potentially overlooked aspects of data quality?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. I think in this new era of AI, large language model and all of that, we have some twists there, right, with like data annotation, which previously, when I started doing data science stuff after my PhD in 2008, so it's been a while. So we've always talked about data quality, and we talked about garbage in, garbage out. I think everybody knows that. But I think this point that what we see a lot is the challenges of the quality of the annotation to start with, especially for startups, right? So startups goes in, try to build their first models. They try to get a starting set of the golden set. And I think often the time overlook the quality and then the consistency. So I don't know, like maybe a show of hands, how many of you have like graded exams before as a teaching assistant, professor, instructors? Okay, some. Okay, and so you might relate that, back to when I teaching many years ago, you have 20 students you need to grade. You say, well, student 1, 70, student 2, 90, and then student 3 comes in, you're like, oh, I don't remember what I did for the first one. So I go back to look, I'm like, okay, now I might need to adjust, because if someone get a 90, this probably get a 110 out of 100. So you go back and adjust your numbers, right? And by the time you get to student 20, you're like, okay, I don't remember at all, so I'll just grade whatever. And so that's kind of like what your data annotators are doing, right? They are grading. Basically, they're labeling and annotate something we're called a golden test data or ground truth data. And think about large language models, a lot of time they're ranking. Yeah, and if you don't have that consistency and a annotation guide and a process that's really systematic, well, your model is going to get, your boss is going to get really confused, right? Let's say a simple example like sentiment analysis. Your bot is going to say, well, this person said that this is neutral sentiment. And why now I'm seeing something similar, but it's labeled as slightly positive. So that's, I think, a kind of the data quality issue today that we're seeing a lot, and that really, really impacts the model performance.
Interesting, yeah. So manual annotation has its
It does.
limitations.
Yeah, it's surprisingly when we work with people that they say, my model is not working as expected, and a lot of time we say, go back and take a look of your labeling, and often the time they discover wrongly annotated data.
Interesting.
Thank you. So one of the things that I want to give people intuition to think about data. I mean, data never goes out of fashion, right? 10 years ago, we used to call data is the new bacon. Data is still the new bacon, even though models are taking all the hype. As you're building product, and I'm coming from a product standpoint because I'm a product manager, as you're building your product, your intelligence is probably offloaded, right? You're using somebody else's model. If you're fine-tuning, great, you're further ahead in the curve, but most people are not. Data is the only asset that you have, right? So why not pay attention to that, right? And data plays in all aspects of product development, whether you're building golden data sets or whether you're building evals, right? Data plays in the entire spectrum of product development. Bootstrapping your models with the right context, evaling the outcomes as they come out of the pipe on the other side. And then also customer signals, right? Are you cleaning up your customer signals to know what to build next, right? So it plays a part in all of those dimensions. The other thing is, if you're fine-tuning your model, right, and you're concerned about, when you're fine-tuning a model, you're probably starting off with some foundation model as a base model, right? And they have trained model on whatever data, you have no control over it. They would have baked biases and other externalities into the model. How do you overcome that? How do you counter that when you're fine tuning? You have to be very intentional with that data. Microsoft actually published a paper some time back called Textbook is All You Need. And they trained a small model called Phi. And the premise of that paper was if you accurately and intentionally curate data, you can actually get a huge uplift in your model outcomes if you do it intentionally and consciously, and your data quality is good.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Ashish, you actually just mentioned something that I think is very interesting. You touched upon evaluations. And that actually is a great segue to our next question, which is how can startups better align their data evaluation metrics with the downstream use case, right? With the intended use case of the model.
Yeah, I mean, so the product management role is changing a lot, right? I mean, we used to develop specs, throw it over the wall, and somebody will develop it and we'll see what users feel about it, right? And I tell product managers now that you own two ends of the spectrum. You own the specs of what needs to be built and developed, and then you also own the evals. Because if you don't own the evals, anything that is happening in between is either going to a foundational model or some engineer is using some vibe coding tool to build those things, right? You don't have control in what's getting done in between. Hopefully you have some control. But the two ends of the spectrum, if you hold them tight and close to heart on what are you building, and that's true for kind of startup and founders as well, right? What are you building? What is your market? Who's your customer? And then how do you evaluate goodness, right? How do you evaluate customer usage signal? Those are important aspects. On the eval side, there's a huge buzz around LLM as a judge. Everybody talks about it, but very few people know how to actually nail it, right? Are you training the judge? Are you fine-tuning it? Are you prompt engineering it, right? What is your strategy? You have to think through that, because if the judge is not good enough, then again, you're evaling using a system which is not perfect. So that's, again, an important aspect to think through.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to understand how many of here in the audience on technical side, maybe I'll say half. And then how many do you consider you're on the business side or application? Well, great, half and a half. So, so that's actually perfect because I think I come from a technical background. And one of the challenges I have faced, and so are our technical teams face, is that really is that to agree on what that metrics from a technical perspective is to that business perspective. And so our technical folks, you're probably talking about models are recall, precision, F1. The other half probably don't know what you're talking about at all, right? Maybe they do, but and then the other half of the room is thinking about revenue, thinking about how many patients might die if the model goes wrong. So what I realized is, and I I like to give examples, probably not most appropriate, but so I have no idea about football, okay? I don't know about any metrics, but I assuming it's stuff with yards or points or something like that. Now, I do care how many times the Patriots win, right? Okay, I do care how many championships they bring back to this greatest city, right? So that's kind of where we are, right? And half of this audience here want to know how much revenue comes in, right? How many lives are saved? And us who are trained in mathematics and physics, and we are very abstract thinkers. We think everybody think that way, but no, not really, right? Majority of applications, people think in a very physically represented way. And that's the hardest component in metrics that I found, is to agree on what are the metrics, first of all, to represent what really mattered in that product goal or business goal. And then overall metrics, the difference between that, your 95% accuracy, what does that mean, right? it probably, every number behind has assumptions, right? It's built on assumptions, which means conditions, which means constraints. So that means the population you're looking at for that metrics, does that really represent your stakeholder, your customer, or your users, what they're looking at? Often the time, it's not necessary to be true. So that's where a lot of the actual work comes in, that to identify that. And it's not easy, I would say. It's not easy, and it's also where it leads to a lot of conflicts down the road. What's going to happen is someone said, you said it's going to be 95. You said, no, it's 95 because of X, Y, Z, right? So you're going to see a lot of conflict, and then that set up that expectation up front with clear metrics and definition is I think is super important.
Right. What does accuracy even mean? Right.
Exactly.
Can I add?
Yeah,
Because this is an exact conversation I'm having at work, and when I go back from here, I'm going to continue having that conversation with my leadership. I always say metrics drive behavior, right? So choose your metrics carefully, because you might be substantiating a wrong behavior or incorrect behavior or outcome. So that is something to think through. Again, startup early in phase, think through, is revenue the goal or customer value the goal, right? So you have to pick your bets. Where do you want to kind of put in your energies? Once you narrow down on what's the goal, right? Hopefully customer value is the goal and revenue is not the goal initially. You then figure out what metrics is a good representative proxy for measuring customer value, right? Sometimes it's click-through, sometimes it's, in our world, I'm from Audible, listening hours. How much people listen on the platform, right? Because if they're not listening, they're not enjoying, they're not consuming, then we're not creating end customer value, right? So think through those numbers deeply, have those conversations with the right stakeholders, and then derive metrics. Also derive counter metrics, right? If people are having a lot of conversation with my chatbot, is that actually good or not good, right? Are they confused, or are they trying to steer the chatbot all along the way to kind of get to the right answer, right? If number of turns in the conversation is the right metric or not, right? So think through those, because that ultimately will kind of underline, are you looking at the right signals? Because those signals will inform the next product iteration.
Nice. Yeah, I was thinking about your question, and I think what we did was, so we started out with this search where you could search all this legal stuff and come up with answers, and we like access to the law and free the law and give the law away to people and all that. And then people said, like lawyers started using it, and they said, well, the next step is, your tool's no good if you can't tell us whether it's still good law or not, because sometimes things get overruled, like, Plessy versus Ferguson was in favor of segregation, then Brown versus Board of Education overruled it, stuff like that. And so lawyers want to know if things are good law, bad law. What the big companies did was they hired thousands of human editors to go through every single judicial opinion and figure out whether how they talked about other cases and whether they were overruling or not. And don't worry, there is a point to this. So what we did is used those types of things, because a lot of that is in legal libraries and things. We use that as like an answer key. And so we knew where we were trying to go to. And so you start these prompts against, what we did was have the AI act as the human editors. So we would have like thousands of these AI jobs going against these opinions, trying to pull things out. And we had to just tune what it was happening so that ultimately we would end up with the same type of answers on the answer key. And sometimes our answers were a little bit different, but it's possible that the humans made a mistake too. So, but I think if you could find an answer key and an end goal of where you want to get with your data and work towards that, but as you're working towards it, you want to make sure that, regression issues where you don't break things as you go along. I think that was huge for us.
Very cool. Yeah, that's actually another great segue into our next question.
Not planned at all.
It's not planned, but you guys are just intuiting where we're going next. The next question is actually along those lines of making sure that your data is up to date, because I think we can all agree data is very important, but we can also agree that data is constantly changing, constantly improving. You can't just do one data iteration or data curation step and then assume you're set for the lifetime of your startup, business, company, et cetera. So how can companies make sure that they're creating a strong data flywheel? What does that look like to make sure their data continues to improve and get better over time? What types of things should they be considering here?
Well, I can start. Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that iteration component and the change, right, does comes in very often. And well, I guess like even especially language models. I mean, I don't understand anything my son's generation says, right? So, if you say sick now, I guess it's not that you need to see a doctor. So, so things drift, and the data drift. And to have that kind of continuous data collection related to what I said also earlier about the annotation, which also need to evolve, right? And then I think on the product side, you want to have, a lot of us are building products, and you want that product to automatically collect that user feedback. Right? It's almost as your annotation, another parts of your annotation, because your user is giving you back good, reject, and so that iteration I think matters, and like what Darian you said, that not just that one time. And that associates to the model side of the model refitting. So a lot of startup, I think, is like what you have observed, that we collect a large data set up front. We said, okay, we're good. And then we do big bang, what we call big bang refreshes, right? You get a lot and then you do a huge refresh. But in reality, we want to do these frequency refreshes along together with that data evolving guides of how to define what is, the annotation side of things, the ranking, whatever, the yes, nos. So that's that to be able to integrate that into the process, to have that closed loop for the flywheel. I think that's a challenging, that's actually quite challenging, but it's important. It's not easy to do because you have to continuously do that and hopefully automate some of the process. So.
Yeah, interesting. Just quick poll. How many folks here who work with data feel their company has nailed data strategy or data platform, right? We've been trying to solve that for last 20 years, hopefully, right? We're still not there. And then we got the AI curveball and we are all scrambling. So data will keep evolving. That's the nature of data. It's like water. It'll keep flowing, right? And there'll be sometimes surge, sometimes drought. But you have to think through the current state we are, right? Intelligence is becoming commoditized. The only thing that you hold near and dear to your heart is your data, right? That's your differential, right? So verticalizing whatever you're building based on your data is the most important thing that you can kind of leverage, right? When thinking about data flywheel, right? It's kind of, you talked about drift, right?
Yeah.
Which is absolutely the thing that you should watch out for. No product has stayed consistent over a period of time. I mean, if I look back, Facebook, the very first version, I could just poke friends, right? Now I consume news with Facebook or whatnot. I should not be consuming news with Facebook. But stuff like that, right? So products drift over time because the user behaviors have changed and drifted, right?
Yeah.
You always are, as a product manager, I'm always looking for user signals, what are unmet needs, what are new realities that I'm operating in. I don't think Facebook ever imagined that they will be kind of curating the news of the world and kind of be influencing elections and things like that. Their customers led them in that direction, and partly their strategy, right? So you have to be observing what your customers are doing with your product, where are those unmet needs, and if you don't have a good way of observing that, that flywheel doesn't get created, right? So while you've built something out and put it out there, observing what your users are doing, again, signals that you're collecting, and how are you processing that back into product improvement is, at least for me, product flywheel, and it kind of stems into data flywheel as well. The other thing I would say about data is there is no lack of data. I mean, everybody says OpenAI has sucked in all the data from the internet and trained these models. Where is new data? We're always creating new data. We are creating data right now here, right? And if that is less, you can always create synthetic data, right? But remember, going back to the previous point, can you discern between good data, bad data for the product that you're building is the most important skill and something that you should build within the organization. If you have that muscle memory, then you're set.
Yeah, good point.
That is good. Yeah, to your point about kind of changing the way you do things, I was thinking that, like, when we first started, we thought we were just going to be this platform where people came and used the tool, and it competed with Westlaw and LexisNexis and all that, but on the lower end of the market. And what we're finding is now is that, like, these other companies are approaching us for the data. So it's like, they're like, oh, we don't really care about your front end, but can we have an API to your data? And yeah,
Yes,
and
a
so
lot of them, yes.
and so in there actually may be more money in that in the data than trying to sell to individual customers. So those types of it's something we're considering right now, but the to your point, like, the data becomes, and because we did everything up front and we have this 100 million rows of data and we aren't relying on the LLM every time, like, we have all the data ready to put into an API. So it's just a matter of doing that. But yeah, you have to be ready for things like that.
Yeah, one of the things Sam Altman said at a YC interview recently, one of the best advice that he got was whatever you're building, open it up as an API as well.
We had similar people say, yes, we just want the API. But I remember when you said that earlier when Microsoft did the textbook thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there was a press release at that point about that was a multi-million-dollar contract that they were licensing from somebody. So that kind of textbook, like that kind of data, right, quality there to come in for the models. I don't remember the topic, but anyway, so what we were talking about, the question, yes.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I think it's very interesting, the different types of data, right? We talk about data is king, data is the new, hyper important, it's liquid gold, but there's all sorts of types of data, right? There's training data, there's user data, there's embedding data, and so knowing the flywheels for each of those and how those are going to impact your business, I think is very insightful and can make a big difference if you think about that very intentionally. So I think this was kind of touched upon earlier, but I want to come back to it a little bit. Ashish, you've mentioned a few times now that data is kind of the only thing these days that some companies can really control and have near and dear to the core business. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are, and then Chuyen and Richard as well, on is data quality and quantity still a moat for startups? Is it still something that can set businesses apart, and do you think it will continue to be?
Great point and great question. Think about it this way, like you ask any organization how valuable your data is, and they're like, super valuable. Nobody ever thinks that data is not valuable, right? And then again, what is your data hygiene? That always is a moving target, right? They don't have good data hygiene. So while again there is tremendous amount of data, thinking about is your data AI ready is super important, right? Because if you can't expose that data to your AI models, whether you're fine tuning or you're context engineering or doing RAGs of some sort, then you can't unlock the value of that data, right? I also say this always, that you pick any model of your choice, right? It will get you to the 90% outcome off the bat, right? So pick any model, run with it. It'll give you 90% to where you want to be. The path between 90 to that 99% is riddled with skeletons in the closet, right? Or it's a jagged kind of space. So that is the place that you have to navigate, and you need to think through how can you bring your data to play that game, leverage that, right? A lot of that is discerning what's good, what's bad, right? And where do I augment holes in my data to get me to that outcome. Now, evals, data validation, all of that stuff, right? People think through that there are, I mean, even large companies have some kind of automated pipelines which do all of this. There isn't, right? Even largest of the entities still struggle with that basic foundational thing. A lot of that is hand curation of golden data sets. Maybe you can take that and build LLMs as a judge to kind of curate more data. But again, that is the place where that 90 to 90% journey is played, right? So think through that, I would say.
Yeah, so if we talk about moat, we actually gravitate. We had a thought leadership piece previously talking about data moat, and things already shifted. I think that was like a couple years ago we did it, and I think at this point, my opinion is that data quality is the moat. Data quantity is less important. That's my opinion, and I think that's the data quality component. It's especially if you're building a startup, by definition, hopefully that you are in a niche, right? You are in an area that you really know well. You're not trying to be a generalist, right? You're trying to be a specialist in some area. Your product is trying to be a specialty product there, and that domain knowledge comes in. That is where that enriches that data of that quality component, and that's how they differentiate with the public data out there. So even let's say, come back, I mean, I'm talking about annotation a lot today, was even that when you're doing your annotation of your data, it has to be some business logic and business rules and business domain knowledge is baked into that you know better than others, right? And that's what your secret sauce is. I have a little bit different opinion from, is that allowed? Okay, from what we said earlier, it's when we say data is the all-in mode. I think that probably assumption here is to say, because the models today, we all go into these, foundational models and small foundational models and open source models, all of those, and so no one differentiate. But I do think that there's, for the moat side, other than the data, there's a huge component of the logic and the rules of that business domain, like legal, right? That you have in a product, because the product engine at the MVP, maybe we duct tape everything together, so it's just a foundational model, that's it. That's probably MVP stage. But once you go beyond that to get to that 99%, and that's where the value is, right? That's where when that foundational engine behind of your product is not just going to rely on foundational model. It's not just going to rely on even some retraining. It's going to rely on a complex system that has knowledge base, that has business rules, that have domain knowledge baked into it. And I think that's what, together with that data, is really that build that technical barrier and the asset for startup.
Yeah, makes sense. Rich, I'm curious what you think, especially given the point you made earlier about companies coming to you kind of just directly wanting the data.
Yeah, I was thinking about the moat, and I think the data is important, but as a startup, I think like your marketing is the moat too, the trust in your company is the moat, your platform is the moat. It's like, because sometimes the data could get commoditized and you still have to differentiate yourself in other ways. And I think that it goes a long way to cover those other bases, because you could have the best data and everything in the world, but if you don't, like if you can't get yourself out there or no one knows about you or anything, then it doesn't do a lot for you. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
have a little bit different view, but if we want to get to Q&A, I don't want to talk too long.
Yeah,
Or-
no, makes a lot of sense, I guess. So what I'm hearing is data is high quality or a good amount of data is potentially fuel for the fire, but it can't start the fire itself.
It might be able to start the fire, but it can't,
Sustain it.
yeah, but,
Can't
yeah.
sustain it. Sure, sure, yeah. Got it. So a lot of combination of things need to go into this. Makes a lot of sense. That's why building a startup is so hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Cool, yeah. Do we want to go into Q&A? Do we have time for one more? Maybe one more? Okay, cool. So it's good timing because we're down to the last question here that I have prepared, which is how should startups think about, sort of along these lines of whether data is a moat or not, how should they think about building versus buying any aspect of their data pipeline, whether that's generation, curation, infrastructure, tooling? I think, Rich, you've had experience on potentially the selling side, right? You've had companies come to you to use the data. Chuyen and Ashish, maybe you have some ideas. But Rich, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, we have a commercial contract with a company to get like our initial data, the raw case law and the raw judicial opinions that just come in, like that were OCR'd from courthouses and everything. And so we had to clean all that up, but do have a commercial license that we had to expend some money upfront to get that. And, but that's the valuable like seed for it. And that's the starting of the fire for us. And then we work off that. And after that, OpenAI has taken a ton of our money, but other than that, we haven't paid for a ton of stuff. We've tried to avoid that because we're self-funded.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So I was part of building platforms for the last 11 years at Microsoft. So I always selfishly tell people before you start building, buy, right? And it goes back to the previous comment I made, right? Unless you're liquid, right, and you can build foundational models yourself, right? There is no point fighting that battle. Jump in, grab something off the shelf, get to that 90%, right? And then go fine tune, fix, prompt engineer, context engineer, do your rags to get to chip away, right? Think about how a sculptor builds a new masterpiece, right? The first few kind of cracks are big cracks, right? Whether they're using hammers or whatnot, right? And then later on, they go to chisel and fine tune their craft, right? Or their art piece. And that's how it is like building a product, right? So I always suggest start with something which is already out there, which can get you to your 90%, and then slowly start to chip away. And then you will know where do you need to invest your energies. Is it more differential data that you need to kind of add to it to fine tune it? Are you good with prompt engineering? Is it a combination of both, right? And going back to the moat thing again, right? I mean, Richard sparked a thought, right? I mean, if you're stuck with data as a moat, you're probably in the wrong place. Your moat is your customers. Start with I'm a product person, so that's why I kind of start there. Are you creating value? And if you're creating enough value, you've created moat, and that moat will give you signals on what to do next, right? So, and everything stems from there, right? Model building, data curation, whatever.
I think from a buy versus build perspective on the data side, I think there's really no, in my opinion, one answer fits all, right? Because really come from what you want to do and what you want to achieve first. And I think being startup, if you're pre-seed, you have 100K to 100K in your bank, and you might not be able to buy a 20K a year license for data, right? So there's just too many options here or really, I think parameters coming in to evaluate of to what extent you can get within your budget. And sometimes, we do have a client, a partner that in women's health, and my advice to them is you do need to go and get your test cohort together and gather that data yourself, because it doesn't even exist, right? Because you have your own new product of your new sensors, and a lot of us are doing innovation, so you have to go get that initial test data. But to Ashish, your point, I mean, if there's the data is available from richest companies API, then why not, right? And if they give you a discounted price because you're their partners, so find your partners that do some negotiation with whatever money in your bank. So I think that's figure out some creative ways. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Do what you can.
Do what you
basically,
can,
Is the,
I
is
mean.
the bottom line, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Get to that 90% in the fastest and most efficient way possible. And sometimes that means build, sometimes that means buy, and probably depends on your company, industry, space, user base, etc.
Sure.
Great. Well, I think maybe we'll transition to the Q&A session now.
Good morning. Thank you guys for the panel. My name is Pete Whiting. I run a software development firm based here in Boston. I have a question around sort of the definition and now blending of product management roles, software development, software engineers, and data scientists. Those used to be very distinct disciplines, and I think now in an AI-enabled world, the expectations of, at least of our clients and others, is that an engineer is a data scientist as well as a product manager and vice versa. And we're seeing like a lot of that because of the, ultimately these LLMs are a bit of a black box, right? So who actually sort of owns the output or who's driving the output? I'd love to hear your opinions on that. I know it's a bit of a nebulous question, but just something that we're noticing.
I live in that world, so I can talk a little bit about that. I have a very strong opinion on that. So because we have team with data engineers, data scientists, and product managers, and I think no one fits all, right? Okay, that's my opinion. And I think by nature, because the training paths of all of us are very different. So on the engineer side, I mean, maybe in the future, things are changing, right? The way how we teach programming is changing. The way how we teach, math probably is not changing much. But I look at myself. I'm a math background, and then trained a statistician and data scientist, and then pretend to be an AI engineer later. But my thinking of lines of thinking, and those who work with us on data scientist side of things, we're very much data detail driven. We're very much analytical driven. We're very much logic driven on things that you figure out, hey, does this, this is a problem. How do I solve it? How do I represent it? And now we work a lot with engineers who coming through an engineering background who were trained, right, in undergrad or grad school. I mean, for 10 years of the way of engineering side of thinking, a lot of these are, a lot is getting things working robustly, right? How to figure out that is working. And so that communication, all of that, we often see very differently. And people to get, I think if you want to have, and then product manager too, I mean, they can have some of those product, like technical skills up front. And then, for example, we work with Northeastern. They have a great program of technical product management, right? Folks that have some technical background comes in, and then you need to be able to communicate and do that kind of product management. But the training path, I think, it's kind of determined how we communicate and how we think and the framework we're thinking in. Yes, we can all try to get general and become a generalist, but in my opinion, that doesn't help, because then everybody kind of becoming a generalist. You're not excelling at what you're doing there. See, to me, I feel like it's the better combinations, having these specialists work seamlessly together and do what's the best they are doing. That's my observation.
Yeah,
at least.
similar opinion as well, right? I feel we're living in a world of superficiality and vibe right now. Have people started to see on LinkedIn a new role starting to emerge called vibe code fixer? Yeah. So again, I hope And I seriously hope in the new world and again future, we will still need specialists to do the job right? However, we all can become more rounded
Yeah, sure.
to understand other spaces. And that's how you kind of expand the circle of influence you're in your own world, right? And again, as product managers, our world is changing, right? We're writing evals, right? What maybe a data scientist would do earlier, right? Because every role, specialist role, is coming from their kind of point of view, right? Data science, like what model am I building? What am I fine tuning? Unless you give them the goals of here what good looks like, and here is how I'm going to evaluate what if that is good or not good, right? You're extending your influence in their domain a little bit. You're guiding them and giving them more structure. They should start to think through as product managers as well a little bit, right? The same is true for architecture, right? What choices do you want to make in the platforms that you pick as a product manager is super important, because you will have to live with those choices. You don't want those choices only to come from an architect, right? So expanding, we have new tools to expand our horizons, but we should, I hope and seriously hope, we let the specialists do their job well.
Oh, we could go on to the next question.
Okay.
Hi, this is Ikshwar. I'm a machine learning engineer currently working. So I have two questions. One is talking about the liquid AI. So I heard like you are like small foundation models, not small specialized models. That is very that is a trend that is being observed in the machine learning space. Like there is a parent model like OpenAI, and they're training a small model like a student model. And where does this going to lead, like small foundational models mean in real sense? And how they're performing is what I'm curious about.
Sure. Yeah. I'll try to keep that a little bit brief. Obviously, a small generalist model probably cannot perform on the same level as a massive one. It just breaks the laws of thermodynamics, of course. We're trying to break those laws, but I think part of what we're doing is getting to that 90%, right? Enabling companies on their own to get to that 90%. And then I think, to Ashish's point, right, the next 9% to get to the 99% requires the specialization, right? And so enabling companies to take a generalist model, a generalist small model, and then customize it, whether that's through prompt engineering, fine tuning, context engineering, RAG, et cetera, customize it to their specific task, to their end goal, on their own without requiring the expertise of an inference engineer, a machine learning scientist, et cetera, right? The word democratize is a little bit loaded here, but trying to sort of make these tools available to your average software developer who maybe doesn't have the specialization. So that's what we're aiming for right now. The models are performing quite well, at least within and slightly above their weight class. They're not going to compete necessarily with your GPT-5s and Claude Sonnets necessarily, but we actually have seen, and we released a blog post recently about a Japanese to English translation model that we released, which was specialized to that task and outperformed GPT-4o. So it is possible to, with the correct data, with the correct evals, with the correct pipeline, to punch above your weight class and save on costs, development, et cetera, and not be shelling out massive contracts to OpenAI to use a model that is really generalized to do a million different tasks when you really just need to do one. So that's sort of the mentality that we have right now at Liquid.
Thank you so much. That was a great answer. And thank you so much. This is a great panel. So I'm a non-technical founder. I'm in women's health industry. We have a pilot that's launching. Actually, it launched last night. So
Congratulations.
celebrate.
Congrats.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Testing it this week. Long story short, I'm thinking about my co-founder now. And because we are in the health space and I have a limit of one to begin with, would I go with a AI engineer, co-founder, or would I go with the health co-founder? AI is the core of our platform. We are using the magic of personalization and education power of it. So I would love to hear you. Like, am I thinking correctly that I need a technical co-founder before anything else?
What's your background?
Yeah.
I'm a women's health practitioner myself.
So you're on the business side.
I am on the business side, yes.
And who built your tool?
I have an offshore team right now.
Are you?
I have an AI engineer who's also on the back end, and I have a full team of front end.
So are you satisfied with the offshore people for now?
I am, but I sense that we are at a point that I need a person that comes in and give me, fine tune it, basically,
Yeah.
what I have built.
I think maybe you need somebody who complements your skills. Unless you're, if you were completely satisfied with the offshore people, then maybe you would get like a product person or something to kind of lead to the next phase or, what?
No.
Oh, yeah. Like my co-founder is as good at marketing as I am at software engineering. So it's like we had both of the skills covered. So it's kind of like if you could complement yourself somehow and maybe not replicate yourself at first, that would be my advice.
Yes.
Yeah, my advice would be to write down what are your blind spots, what are you not good at, right?
Like things you're talking about is above my,
Yeah.
what I understand. So.
And then also the value that you're creating. What do you need the most right now in terms of that value? Create an acceleration of that value, right? Maybe you can get by technical for a few more months, but you need really somebody who's domain expert. I'm not saying that's what you need, but writing that down somehow, somewhere. What are my blind spots? Who are my customers? What do I need in my product progression next, right? Will help you kind of somehow create a mind map of what skills would I need next. Don't bring in somebody who you always agree with also, right? Because you guys need to fight it out, right? That would be my advice.
Thank you.
Good morning, Barry Starr. I'm an investor, I'm a mentor. I spent 20 years building a market data business, so I know this world and I love listening to you guys. My question is, anybody can build a bridge. The more creative, the harder thing is to build a bridge that's just strong enough to do what it needs to do without over-engineering it, right? And in the world of startups, where you've got employee pressures, and you've got investor pressures, and you've got family pressures, and you've got all, the time is clicking and all that kind of stuff. The trick is how to get into market fast, how to build, how not to over-engineer something to get something started. And touched on it a little bit, but not a whole lot. Rich is probably more in your world than anybody else in terms of, what did you have to, how little did you have to do to get your first client?
Yeah. Did you want to say something? Oh,
Yeah, well, just answer his question.
sure.
I only spent 4 hours. I only spent 4 hours and launched my startup online platform, Max, which is an AI job. But it took me about a year. Finally, 3 weeks ago, it runs my customer visiting flow in. It's about, right now, reach about 500 visitors and about 5% sign it up.
Right.
And the story turns downhill because somebody hijacked it. I still able to see my visitors visiting my site, but I don't own the site anymore because I cannot find it. I cannot see it. I don't know where it is.
So
That's tough. Yeah, that's rough.
yeah.
And I own the domain, and for 7 years until 2021. I cannot access my business email.
Wow.
Right now, just running around free somewhere, I cannot see. And I see that my visitors coming in from Russia, Europe, UK, and even though I put on site says it's a local. So this is really a security issue that really serious. Wax is like everyday coffee. They are not surprised. They have grown so fast, dry with AI. They launched stock market, and then their technician, like tech supporting, doesn't have enough to cover. And I think they're focused on sort of like Amazon item product selling, click side, click of the revenue. My site is like service. It's like financial service. It's an outlier for their coverage. So they don't care. They didn't pay much attention.
That's tough.
Yeah.
What time does this go till? Oh, okay. I could answer your thing really quick. What we did to get customer acquisition at first is we launched in we started building in early 23, and we launched in the summer, and we put our thing out as like a paid product. And then we realized like you can't just build it and they will come. So we decided, we're just going to put it out there for free, like, and just kind of, and so it actually had these unintended consequences where people were like calling us the Robin Hood of legal tech and all this, because we were like, and so we got all these customers, and we got people signing up and using, like, hundreds and now thousands of people a day are using it. And then once we built that trust, that's when we built like some additional paid tools like that good law, bad law thing. And so then now we have people paying, but there's still that whole trust out there, and people are like, oh, they're that company, the one that helped everybody get access to the law. So, I mean, that may not work for everybody, but it's a way to get out there quick.
Yeah, that's a great story. I mean,
Yeah,
Oh,
that's a great
thanks.
story, yeah.
yeah,
There's an
it's the art of building the MVP, right?
Yeah.
There's an interesting concept, I think, of levered beta, right? Which is that in the past, startups have tried to find the alpha, right? They're like, what is unique to them, their experience, their domain expertise, et cetera, that sets them apart from everyone else. But in this sort of new age, where the technology and the models are increasing so fast, the beta, which is just the entire market, the technology that's available to everyone, increases and accelerates so quickly that it kind of wipes out the impact of your alpha, right? So then what really matters is how can you maximize your multiplier on that beta? And a lot of that, actually, to Rich's point earlier in the panel, is based on mind share, marketing, that sort of thing. So if you are the Lovables of the world, and maybe, you are not really as good at what you claim to do, right? Oh, tell a model, I want an app that does X, Y, Z, and you get this app for free, and it's built for you in 30 minutes. It's probably not great. It probably has security issues. It probably has a lot of different problems. But the technology, the beta, will grow. It will get there. But Lovable has so much mind share in the market now that when it's there, they're going to be the ones that people go to first, right? And they're going to be the ones that do end up having that 99% value, and people will think of them as having that 99% value because they had the 90% value first. And so I think it's a really good point.
Yeah.
Right? Get to that 90% value, get the marketing out there, make sure that you're the one that people think of when they think of build an app with AI in one click type of thing, right? And you're not going to be there right now. You might not be there today or tomorrow, but in a year or two, when you are, people will come back to you and think of you that way. So that's an interesting concept I heard
That's
recently.
interesting.
I'm sort of parroting it a little bit, but it's not my original idea. But it's a concept I heard recently
Interesting.
that is kind of driving a lot of the way that I think about product and development now. What's the minimum effort that we can do to get there?
We have some conversations, like even around our own business, that's on the marketing side. I think the question is how do you do, because marketing is now it's a pay to play, and it's very expensive, especially if you're on 2C. 2B, I think a little bit different. We're in the 2B world, but 2C, my friends who are running, companies, they're burning $1 million a day, $1 million a week, right? That's one way to scale. But I think that one of the things we're trying to do is to do more, is to do that trust piece of thought leadership and authentic content. So one of the advice that I was getting is to find the kind of influencers in the area that you have have that trust, and then do that kind of more organic, authentic content-led marketing instead of like large batches of TikTok, Instagram, Facebook kind of situation. But anyways, I think it's a very interesting concept, and wonder what's the way to implement.
Well, I think we're out of time. Yeah.
Great.
Sorry, I swear it's a quick question or as quick as possible. I don't want to take up anybody's time more than necessary. But before I get into it, it's a question about mode. So going back a little bit and with a practical example that hopefully would be relevant for everybody else. Do any of you guys have any experience with the edtech space or any familiarity with that at all? That's not the question. It's just curious. Okay, perfect. So, all right, no head nods, but like it still would be relevant because it goes back to mode. So I created a online tutoring company. There was already competitors in the space. That was deliberate. But obviously, if I'm going to excel, I need something that's 10x, that's also durable. Education is a very difficult market to get in now for various reasons. If you follow the news at all, it's kind of apparent.
Yes.
Since COVID, spending has gone down. It's tough making a company that's durable. So I wanted to know, in your general experience, in this kind of use case, how would you make something durable? So again, with the marketplace that I'm doing, you have it's supposed to be more durable. You have students, you have tutors as well, both sides, a network effect. But I'd love to know what data I could use to collect that would be relevant to make it longer lasting and more durable than any of my competitors, or just anything along those lines.
I would start with who's your user? Is it parents? Is it students? Is it teachers? Like
Yeah, parents and students. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so parents would be the ones who are signing up their students. Yeah. So if you think tutoring platform, the users for that, you'd be right. Yes, the students, any ages. It's honestly all age groups. It's from K through 12 and college students as well. I'm currently working on reaching out to high schools to try and form these partnerships. Colleges, universities as well, things like that. Cambridge, actually, they have this service, Finding Cambridge, that I just spoke to the guy to yesterday, have a call with him today. So, if that gives you any more sense of who we'd be working with, then.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk offline. I mean, I recently interviewed with a edtech company, Curriculum Associates, if you know them.
Okay. Vaguely, I believe so.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, we could talk about that. But again, it comes down to who your customers are or users are, what their pain points are, and then what's their unmet need, right? I mean, there are a ton of tools, Khan Academy, Udemy, and whatnot. What is that niche that you are going to try to address, right?
The differentiation.
That's just differentiation.
of
Then
course.
how do you get to that value creation, validation of that as fast as possible?
That makes sense. I get it's a very broad question, so I can't blame you for that. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to talk more offline.
Great.
Thank you so much. And the next session we have in this room is Mastering Acquisition and Annotation for AI Success at 11 o'clock. So if someone's staying the session, we'd like for you to re-register outside and come back. And if not, I'll see you at the next session. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Darren, for modeling. Thank you, guys. This is fun. Thank you. This is fun. Yeah, thank you. Rich, I need to talk to you about what you guys are doing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
I will come over. Yeah.
I am advising another startup based out of the US.